Philippines during the American period. The history of the Philippines from 1898 to 1946 describes the period of the American colonization of the Philippines. It began with the outbreak of the Spanish-American War in April 1898, when the Philippines was still a colony of the Spanish East Indies, and concluded when the United States formally recognized the independence of the Republic of the Philippines on July 4, 1946. With the signing of the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States, thereby beginning the era of American colonization. The interim U.S. military government of the Philippine Islands experienced a period of a great political turbulence characterized by the Philippine-American War. Beginning in 1901, the military government was replaced by a civilian government, the insular government of the Philippine Islands, with William Howard Taft serving as its first governor-general. Also, a series of insurgent governments that lacked significant international and diplomatic recognition existed between 1898 and 1904. Following the passage of the Philippine Independence Act in 1934, a Philippine presidential election was held in 1935. Manuel L. Quezon was elected and inaugurated second president of the Philippines on November 15, 1935. The insular government was dissolved and the Commonwealth of the Philippines, intended to be a transitional government in preparation of the country's full achievement of independence in 1946, was brought into existence. After the World War II, Japanese invasion in 1941 and subsequent occupation of the Philippines, the United States and the Philippine Commonwealth military recaptured the Philippines in 1945. The United States formally recognized the independence of the Republic of the Philippines on July 4, 1946. According to the terms of the Philippine Independence Act, the Philippine Revolution began in August 1896 and ended with the Pact of Biak na Bato, a ceasefire between the Spanish colonial governor-general Fernando Primo de Rivera and the revolutionary leader Emilio Aguinaldo, which was signed on December 15, 1897. The terms of the pact called for Aguinaldo and his militia to surrender. Other revolutionary leaders were given amnesty and a monetary indemnity by the Spanish government, in return for which the rebel government agreed to go into exile in Hong Kong. The failure of Spain to engage in active social reforms in Cuba, as demanded by the United States government, was the basic cause for the Spanish-American War. American attention was focused on the issue after the mysterious explosion that sank the American battleship Maine on February 15, 1898 in Havana Harbor. As public political pressure from the Democratic Party and certain industrialists built up for war, the U.S. Congress forced the reluctant Republican President William McKinley to issue an ultimatum to Spain on April 19, 1898. Spain found it had a diplomatic support in Europe, but nevertheless declared war. The U.S. followed on April 25 with its own declaration of war. Theodore Roosevelt, who was at that time Assistant Secretary of the Navy, ordered Commodore George Dewey, commanding the Asiatic Squadron of the United States Navy, ordered the squadron to Hong Kong, keep full of coal. In the event of declaration of war Spain, your duty will be to see that the Spanish squadron does not leave the Asiatic coast and in offensive operations in Philippine Islands. The U.S. squadron departed on April 27 for the Philippines, reaching Manila Bay on the evening of April 30. In the Battle of Manila Bay, the Battle of Manila Bay took place on May 1, 1898. In a matter of hours, Commodore Dewey's Asiatic Squadron defeated the Spanish squadron under Admiral Patricio Montojo. The U.S. squadron took control of the arsenal and navy yard at Cavite. Dewey cabled Washington, stating that although he controlled Manila Bay, he needed 5,000 additional men to seize Manila itself. U.S. preparation for land-based operations. The first contingent of American troops arrived on June 30 under the command of Brigadier General Thomas MacArthur Anderson, commander of the 8th Corps 2nd Division. U.S. brigade and division numbers of the era were not unique throughout the Army. General Anderson wrote to Aguinaldo requesting his cooperation in military operation against the Spanish forces. Aguinaldo responded thanking General Anderson for his amicable sentiments, but saying nothing about military cooperation. General Anderson did not renew the request. The 2nd Brigade and the 2nd Division of the 8th Corps arrived on July 17 under the command of Brigadier General Francis B. Greene. Major General Merritt, Commander-in-Chief of the Philippine Expedition, and his staff arrived at Cavite on July 25. The 1st Brigade of the Corps 2nd Division arrived on July 30 under the command of Brigadier General Arthur MacArthur. Philippine Declaration of Independence. On June 12, 1898, Aguinaldo proclaimed the independence of the Philippines at his house at Cavite El Viejo. Ambrosio Reinsares Bautista wrote the Philippine Declaration of Independence and read this document in Spanish that day at Aguinaldo's house. On June 18, Aguinaldo issued a decree formally establishing his dictatorial government. On June 23, Aguinaldo issued another decree, this time replacing the dictatorial government with a revolutionary government and naming himself as a president. Peace Protocol between the U.S. and Spain. On August 12, 1898, the New York Times reported that a peace protocol had been signed in Washington that after between the U.S. and Spain, suspending the hostilities between the two nations. The full text of the protocol was not made public until November 5, but Article 3 read, "The United States will occupy and hold the city bay and harbor of Manila, pending the conclusion of a treaty of peace, which shall determine the control, disposition, and government of the Philippines." After conclusion of this agreement, U.S. President McKinley proclaimed a suspension of hostilities with Spain. Capture of Manila. By June, U.S. and Filipino forces had taken control of most of the islands, except for the walled city of Intramuros. Admiral Dewey and General Merritt were able to work out a bloodless solution with acting General Fermin Judenes. The negotiating parties made a secret agreement to stage a mock battle in which the Spanish forces would be defeated by American forces. But the Filipino forces would not be allowed to enter the city. This plan minimized the risk of unnecessary casualties on all sides, while the Spanish would also avoid the shame of possibly having to surrender Intramuros to the Filipino forces. On the eve of the mock battle, General Anderson telegraphed Aguinaldo, "Do not let your troops enter Manila without the permission of the American commander. On this side of the Pasig River, you will be under fire." U.S. military government. On August 14, 1898, 2 days after the capture of Manila, the U.S. established a military government in the Philippines, with General Merritt acting as military governor. During the military rule in the year 1898 up to 1902, the U.S. military commander governed the Philippines under the authority of the U.S. President as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces. After the appointment of civil governor general, the procedure developed that as parts of the country were pacified and placed firmly under American control, responsibility for the area would be passed to the civilian. Spanish-American War ends. In the U.S., there was a movement for Philippine independence. Some said that the U.S. had no right to a land where many of the people wanted self-government. In 1898, Andrew Carnegie, an industrialist and steel magnate, offered to pay the U.S. government of $20 million to give the Philippines its independence. On November 7, 1900, Spain and the U.S. signed the Treaty of Washington, clarifying that the territories relinquished by Spain to the United States included any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago, but lying outside the lines described in the Treaty of Paris. The treaty explicitly named the islands of Cagayan, Sulu, and Sibutu, and their dependencies as among the relinquished territories.